Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss Athletic Director Keith Carter are set to meet Friday. What do we know about it? We'll share everything with you now. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. And thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. We're thrilled and glad to have you aboard with us. So it's another day. It's another day of the Kiffin saga. Will he, won't he? And we do have a little bit of news and advancement in this story. As we reported at LouisianaSports.net, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss Athletic Director Keith Carter are set to meet on Friday. This meeting, as I understand it, having multiple sources confirm this meeting to me, and the objective of the meeting is for Keith Carter to get clarity on Lane Kiffin's future at Ole Miss or elsewhere. And then also on the other side, for Keith Carter to present a comprehensive NIL plan to Lane Kiffin about how Ole Miss will move forward in this new NIL world of the rev share. And I'll explain why all that's relevant in just a second. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Matt, what's the big deal? The athletic director and the head football coach probably see each other all the time. That is a factual accuracy. As a matter of fact, Lane Kiffin even said that on the SEC coaches teleconference on Wednesday. Listen.
Keith and I've seen him twice already today. Keith and I have a great relationship. We communicate daily on a lot of things, and I love it here. And it's been amazing. And we're in the season that's the greatest run in the history of Ole Miss at this point. So I think it's really exciting. I think Saturday night was amazing. So I'm just living in the moment, and our players are too. I see their joy about the practice season, where they're at, and have so much on the line. It's just awesome to be a part of.
So you heard Lane say there that that was Wednesday. He said saw him twice today already. I talked to him twice already. See him every day. So yes, seeing the athletic director, having conversation, formalities. I think that is very, very normal and commonplace. For example, the conversations that maybe they've had here in the past few days, just, normal stuff that you talk, NIL stuff, just things that are regular in sort of an irregular environment in this day and age. But like we've talked about, there are two primary reasons why Ole Miss needs a decision from Lane Kiffin. And there was the report from Stuart Mandel a week ago that Ole Miss had given him an ultimatum. And we talked about it here that was probably too strong a verbiage. I don't think Ole Miss has given Lane Kiffin any type of ultimatum, but they are pressing here. And there are things I think they've told Lane Kiffin specifically about the consequences of the decision he makes. And we've been pretty open about that here. For example, if Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss, he will not coach this team in the playoff. Of that, I am absolutely certain. And you look at their staff, Joe Judge, who's a former NFL head coach, is most likely to be named the interim for a playoff run and all. So, there's some things we know, I think, that have definitively been explained to Lane Kiffin already. But there's two reasons primarily why I think this meeting needs to take place and they need some clarity. One is to provide a clear picture for the College Football Playoff Selection Committee when they go into their session to choose the teams after next weekend. Remember, after the Florida State situation a couple of years ago when Jordan Travis was injured and Florida State was undefeated and left out of the playoff, the committee updated their verbiage. So, and the principles as it's laid out there for the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, they are allowed to consider, quote, unavailability of key players and coaches. So that's to say, what if Lane Kiffin isn't with Ole Miss? Would the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, if Ole Miss, let's say hypothetically they drop a game against Mississippi State, and so they're 10-2, and maybe it's a little teetering, and Lane's not there, could that push them out of the playoff? Well, that becomes a massive massive situation if Ole Miss were to miss the playoff altogether because of that. Consider if they beat Mississippi State and remain with where their seeding is, they could very well end up as the 5 seed with a home game against a G6. That would be a massive stage at Vaught Hemingway Stadium, TV. I've been told it would be a massive financial windfall for the city of Oxford over that weekend and for the university. So they want to be in the playoff, clearly, and they want to host a playoff game, but they're going to need some clarity for the college football playoff committee as they announce the teams, and they need to have their ducks in a row for that. That's one. Two is, the other part of it is if, in fact, Lane Kiffin does decide to leave Ole Miss for LSU. And as of this point, it seems very clear that his decision that Florida is slipping in this. It seems very clear at this point that this is going to be either Lane Kiffin stays at Ole Miss or he takes the LSU job. But if he does, in fact, leave Ole Miss, then Ole Miss is going to be in the market for a new head coach in earnest. And so they're going to need to get started. We've given you the example of John Summerall, for example, and there was a little, topsy-turvy moment on Wednesday night with John Summerall when he reportedly from On3 had a meeting with Florida scheduled and then canceled that meeting. I think it remains to be seen if that was ever actually a scheduled meeting or how much interest Florida or John Summerall may have had. But either way, the point being, there are people within Ole Miss who have made it known through various channels that they would covet John Summerall if Lane Kiffin leaves. And so what they don't want to have happen is Summerall take the Auburn job or the Florida job or whatever it may be, and then they miss the opportunity to hire who their top candidate may be. So for those two reasons, Ole Miss is kind of pressing here. And Keith Carter needs some clarity from Lane Kiffin. The other side of it, and this is probably the newer part that I want to delve deeper into, is Lane Kiffin wants clarity from Ole Miss on the financial side, not for him, not what he's going to get paid. Because if Lane Kiffin stays at Ole Miss or goes to LSU or goes to Florida, he's going to get paid. He's going to get a giant contract and he's going to make a ton of money. He might very well, with incentives and all, whatever, be the highest paid coach in college football. Very likely will be the highest paid coach in college football. So it's not about him. It's about his ability to win. And that's what I'm going to dig deeper in and explain as we continue here. Don't you move. I'm stepping aside quickly. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So as we talk about the finances, remember, Ole Miss was one of the most aggressive programs when it came to transfer portal. I mean, Lane's the self-proclaimed portal king, the transfer portal and NIL, funding their collective, the Grove Collective. And what that allowed Ole Miss to do is what they did a season ago. Go out and buy the best roster. Go get Walter Nolan and Princely Uman Mielen and Trey Amos and Trey Harris. And you all know the drill. They were able to go in the portal and just go buy great players through their collective. Well, July 1st, the House settlement goes into effect, revenue share goes into effect, and collectives are no longer allowed to just pay players. Every NIL deal has to be true NIL that goes through the NIL Go clearinghouse managed by Deloitte. So every NIL deal over $600 now has to be approved by a clearinghouse. You can't just pay the players through NIL. You have your rev share money, but that's capped, right? Everyone can divvy up the $20.5 million they spend across their entire athletic department. For most football programs, at 75% or $14-15 million. Well, that $14-15 million is good, but it's only going to carry you so far, and then you're capped, and the playing field is level. The question is, how do you build NIL on top of that revenue share? And that's what a lot of programs are trying to figure out. Because if it has to go through the clearinghouse and has to be true NIL, well, are you then taking money from the collective and maybe handing this money to legitimate businesses to sign these student athletes for legitimate NIL deals, or however it works? Or are you engaging your boosters who happen to be business owners to do NIL deals with your student athletes. There has to be a plan. And my understanding is that Lane Kiffin, in his decision, is far less about what people think it's about. This isn't about where his son's going to play high school football or where his father-in-law, his wife's dad, played college football. This is not even the emotion of not wanting to leave your team before the playoff. This is very much for Lane Kiffin about where he can go win and create his legacy. It's why he's talked to Nick Saban and Jimmy Sexton and Kirby Smart and people within the profession he trusts, and they are steering him toward LSU because of the resources LSU has. And my understanding is that Lane Kiffin has expressed this to people, and I have not spoken personally with Lane Kiffin, but I have had conversations with people who have had these conversations with Lane recently. And what is abundantly clear is he thinks this clearinghouse model will cause college football to revert to the old way, where you have the haves and the have-nots. Because Texas Tech, SMU, these are great stories, but they bought their way into relevance. They were able to fund their collective with billionaire boosters and go buy rosters. Well, now you're not able to just do that through your collective anymore. The rev share is capped. And so how can you build true NIL on top of the rev share? And that's sometimes where you have to get creative or have business owners that are engaged and involved in how you can make all of that work. And so from Lane's perspective, his fear is in this era where they can't just go stroke a check and pay Walter Nolan a bunch of money and get him away from Texas A&M, will the power revert to the blue bloods, the programs with the best facilities, the best coaches, the best tradition, the best travel budget? And if that's the case, then maybe your opportunity to win long-term at Ole Miss is not as great as it might be in this current era where Lane's beaten Ole Miss. Lane's beaten LSU 3 of the last 6 years. Lane just beat Florida as well. He's going to have his team in the playoff before either of those programs make it. But the question for Lane Kiffin isn't, can he make a 12-team playoff? It's, can he win a national championship or championships? And if you look at the odds, Ole Miss is about the 7th, 8th best odds of winning the national championship this year. They'll make the playoff. But the teams with better odds to win it right now, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Georgia, Oregon, Texas Tech, Alabama, then Ole Miss, they have the 9th best odds to win the national championship. So for Lane, it's not about winning a lot of games and getting to a 12-team playoff. It's how do you go win championships and where can you do that? And if this new era is going to cause things to revert to what it was for decades, then you are more likely to win at a place like LSU than you are at Ole Miss. And the other side of it, too, is, of course, LSU's won national championships. Ole Miss hasn't. They would still be having to do it for the first time. So this meeting with Lane Kiffin and Keith Carter, I believe, is they are planning, and Keith Carter is expected to show Lane Kiffin a plan for the next phase of NIL. And then the question becomes timeline. Okay, they had this meeting on Friday. Remember, Ole Miss is going to practice on Thursday, and then the players are off for the weekend. They'll be back Sunday night to start getting ready for Egg Bowl week because they play on Friday. So they'll begin. So then it's a timeline for Lane Kiffin. That still is very much unclear. I mean, Ole Miss wants an answer now. LSU would love to have an answer now as well, so it knows what it can be, what its possibilities are. But what seems very apparent at this point is Ole Miss, no matter what, wants Lane Kiffin to coach the Egg Bowl. For the reason we started, if somehow Ole Miss gets upset in the Egg Bowl and then Lane Kiffin leaves, their playoff opportunity is significantly damaged. They'd be 10-2. They'd have a close loss at Georgia and a road loss to Mississippi State in a rivalry game. But 2 losses and your coach leaving, remember the criteria I just shared with you, there's a chance they could be out of the playoff. You beat Mississippi State, you're 11-1. Chances are you're in no matter where you're seated. So that's a big part of it, right? Is they want both Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin want him to coach the Egg Bowl. If he's staying at Ole Miss, if they have this meeting on Friday, he decides Friday, sleeps on it, tells him Saturday, Sunday, whenever. Again, this timeline is indefinite. Then I believe what will happen is they have the contract already on the table. He'd sign it, they'd announce a contract extension, and they'd go into Egg Bowl week knowing they've got their coach locked up. And then LSU moves on to who's next on their list, which, by the way, that list is narrowed. I'll tell you the 4 names I think are on that list here in just a second. But if Kiffin says he's leaving and they want him to coach the Egg Bowl still, This is where things get very, very complex, because I think they would prefer to make the announcement that he's leaving after the Egg Bowl, so they don't have a lame duck coach publicly coaching them in this rivalry game. I think they'd rather play the Egg Bowl, then announce Kiffin's leaving, say Joe Judge is the interim coach for their postseason run, and then Kiffin moves on to LSU, Florida, whatever it be. I think at this point, LSU's leading. It would be LSU if he's leaving Ole Miss. The problem there is if Lane Kiffin tells Keith Carter that he's leaving, and this is a hypothetical, by the way. I do not know what he's decided. I do not know what he has decided. If he's made it, I do not believe he's made a decision yet. If he tells Keith Carter that he's leaving, then LSU would have to know he's coming. So how in the world could you keep it quiet for a week that Lane Kiffin has told Keith Carter he's leaving and he's told LSU he's coming? That feels like an impossible ask to keep that quiet over the course of a week when everybody, every minute of every day is locked into this story. But that's where it is right now. Friday is going to be a pretty seminal moment, a pivotal moment here in this entire conversation where Keith Carter is going to try to make Lane Kiffin feel comfortable about the direction of this program from an NIL, rev share, financial standpoint for the roster moving forward, to have them believe that the success they've had in this era, this NIL era, is sustainable in the new phase of this NIL era. And if we get word, and when we get word how that meeting went, we'll certainly share it with you. Now, I mentioned maybe this is bearing the lead, but I mentioned that I feel like there is a short list of candidates for LSU after Lane Kiffin. And after Lane Kiffin, I believe their top target will be Eli Drinkwitz. And Eli Drinkwitz appears that he's going to have options. Looks like we've shared with you that Cam Newton at Auburn is pushing for Eli Drinkwitz. Eli Drinkwitz was Cam's quarterbacks coach during their national championship season in 2010. So Cam's pushing hard there. Drink presumably would have an opportunity at Florida, possibly even Penn State. So he's got options as well. But I think Drinkwitz would be on that list. Kenny Dillingham from Arizona State would be on that list. John Summerall from Tulane would be on that list. And then the wild card would be Blake Baker. If you can't come to a deal or find something agreeable with the others, you could promote the popular assistant from within. And listen, that's something that is not uncommon. I mean, Sharon Moore was promoted at the University of Michigan. Ryan Day was promoted at Ohio State. Marcus Freeman was promoted at Notre Dame. Brent Venables was first-time head coach at Oklahoma. Before him, Lincoln Riley was promoted as a first-time head coach at Oklahoma. So prominent premier programs in college football have given coordinators their first head coaching jobs and had success. Kirby Smart at Georgia. So it's doable and could be possible. I think that's a long shot, but it is at least something to consider. So if not Kiffin, I think it'd be any one of those four: Drinkwitz, Kenny Dillingham, John Summerall, Blake Baker. I think that would be your list after Lane Kiffin. Of course, we'll be here talking about it. Whenever we know something, we'll share it with you here on Locked on LSU. So do me a favor. If you're new, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day. And what better time to be here than now with all of this craziness? It's Locked on LSU, your team every day.